and welcome to Prison Coaching, where we talk openly, honestly about things that make this life just a little bit difficult and how to get on a little bit better in it. Today, I'm going to be sharing some red flags that were written and published by Dr. Sean O'Connor of the Australian Psychological Society to avoid in selecting a coach. And although these were wonderful bullet points, I wanted to give my perspective as a coach on why they are or aren't red flags and give you a full explanation for why that is. The first of our red flags is the coach advertises exclusively based on their own experiences. This is a tough one because many coaching businesses are set up as private practices, so independent coaches do spend considerable energy cultivating their brand image and selling you that story. That's basic marketing. But I'm still going to agree that it is a red flag because coaching requires client advocacy. Even if I am very familiar with the problem set that you're bringing forward to coaching, and even if I have a solution which I think might be wonderful in your situation, my ethical obligation is to enable you as the client not to duplicate me. If a coach is providing prescriptive advice, this ignores any nuance of context, which is undoubtedly different between your situation and my situation. And it fails to acknowledge the expertise that you have in your own life. It is far more important to honor your autonomy than to get my way as a coach. So if you are in the market for a coach, their story should be part of their appeal, but their primary qualification should be in coaching skills, not in storytelling. Our second red flag is that the coach has a lack of training or only short-term training. Coaching is a skill, and since none of us are born with that skill, it's highly unlikely that someone just stumbled upon it without at least some coaching-specific education. As a result, they rely on their personality or storytelling ability for credibility, and that is red flag number one. So I think we can update this red flag, though, to give it a little bit of a better explanation. Short-term training includes many self-credentialed programs, and these programs are often perfunctory. They overpromise and they underdeliver, and they don't care about the competency or skill set of a coach, and they're probably not seeking accreditation because they know they wouldn't get it. If you are looking for a credentialed coach, make sure any certifications they have and that they advertise were issued by a third-party agency and not by a certification mill. The coach should be able to tell you how many clock hours that training was. Robust training, and this is a wide rule of thumb, is often between 60 and 100 hours and often takes more than 6 months to complete. So any program, and this is just my opinion, but any program that can be completed in like a long weekend or less than a week is really suspect. Continuing this line of thinking into our third red flag, Dr. Connor says to be wary of coaches who can't or won't provide details of what kind of continuing education requirements they have or any supervisory requirements. Unsurprisingly, I agree with him here too. Most accrediting agencies have educational requirements to ensure that coaches stay current in the field. Even if your coach isn't credentialed, they do need to undertake professional development to stay current in the field. But if you're the type of coach who is selling your personality or selling your backstory, this type of education can go by the wayside. Often this can result in a coach just selling whatever, but personally, I don't want whatever. I want evidence-based, scientifically supported coaching, and your coach should be able to provide that, and the only way to do that is to ensure their continued professional development in their field. Speaking of this is the fourth red flag. If your coach is unable to answer what evidence or scientific practice informs their coaching, their methodology might not be what produces the results that we see from other coaches who do use evidence-based practices. To clarify, I don't think that every coach needs to have a doctoral degree in psychology, but they should be able to tell you what they do and how they do it. And if a coach can't describe that, just run. I am going to add an inject of my own here though. I don't include a coaching philosophy in this or a coaching approach in this red flag. These perspectives are developed by the coach over time. They change over time and they really just reflect subjective viewpoints. And sometimes this question does come up on like a list of questions to ask your coach if you're in the hiring market. And that's fine. It's great. It's actually a good question to ask. But it doesn't determine if your coach is credible. It determines if your coach is a good fit for you. Because of that, I've excluded not having a coaching philosophy as a red flag. But if a specific philosophy is important to you, ask away, because your coach being a good match for you is incredibly important, just not a red flag. But what is a red flag? Red flag number 5, the coach doesn't have a code of ethics. A real, written, audited, and externally supported code of ethics. Most credentialing agencies, schools, and professional organizations will have a code of ethics, and even for a completely unaffiliated coach, which is unlikely, but if they are unaffiliated, they would still want to adopt one because it costs nothing, it's readily available, and it protects the coach as well as you, the client. So there's not a good excuse not to have one. Personally, again, this is my opinion, but I would not hire a coach who did not adhere to an ethical code. They should also know that code well, be able to highlight the key points and give you a summary of it, and be willing to share the full document with you. So far, I focused on grouping these red flags together somewhat logically so that they can kind of flow on things that impact a coach's skill set and their ability to deliver what they advertise. But this last practice touches a little bit more on their business practices and how they operate their business. And the following red flags also will focus more on their business practices. You may also notice so far that I've just agreed with everything Dr. O'Connor had to say for good reason. It's an excellent written article that I have linked. But for this next half, I'll be providing more variation and dissent in my opinion. Again, because we're focusing on business practices now and not coaching skill. The first example of this is red flag number 6. The coach is unable to provide examples of previous coaching experience. Sure, I suppose if a coach had no experience, it would be a bigger risk for you to take them on because they're unknown, but every professional is a novice at one point. So is this really a red flag? It's just a consideration that the coach may be newer than another coach. The quality of the coaching hours is really, really hard to measure. And a coach is obviously going to provide you specific examples that are going to feed the narrative that they're competent. So you're not necessarily getting accurate information to make your decision off of. For example, are Google reviews important to you, or do you prefer website testimonials? Both can be fabricated, and many testimonials are compensated, which in my mind just makes them advertisements. I can't force, as a coach, I can't force genuine reviews, nor can I compel my clients to list themselves as references. In fact, I can't even offer their names as references without their explicit consent, let alone contact information. So the only experience that you get to see that a coach provides you is what the marketing team allows you to see, and that is not impartial. So not providing examples is not great, but it's also not suspect. I would much, much, much rather see genuine testimonials or reviews that were spontaneously provided by the client, again, on a third-party site, than anything that the coach is going to say about their methodology or how they practice and what their clients say. Because at the end of the day, that's smoke and mirrors, and it's not something the coach can control. So is it a consideration? Yes. Do you want your coach to be relatively experienced? Probably. But it's not a red flag, just a consideration. Red flag number 7 is that the coach doesn't have a formal contract. A contract contains a lot of important information for the coach and the client. It describes the coach-client relationship, what services are rendered, the scheduling process, refund policies, payment schedules, dispute resolution, limitations to coaching, among other items. It's a lot. So coaches who only coach as a hobby or who only coach family and friends might get away with not having a contract, but it's really not a good habit to have. Contracts are an important tool for the client to help them make sense of their purchase, and it protects the coach from a lot of liability when well written. Much like the code of ethics, there's not a good reason not to have one. It's very affordable, it's easy to obtain, it's basic business practices for a coach, and it's one of the first things that a professional coach would develop. So not having one is definitely a red flag. Red flag number 8 is failure to outline limitations and how certain issues will be handled. And red flag number 9 is a lack of clarity around fees and charges. Now, I grouped these together because they actually fall under the previous heading for me because they are in my contract. But my contract is a bit longer. It's around 3 pages. And I realize a lot of coaches have shorter contracts, and I've seen many successful 1-page contracts, so these terms might not be spelled out. If that is the case, they need to be clearly articulated and written elsewhere. Not having your legal limitations spelled out is definitely a red flag. You should know exactly what you're getting, the cost and the frequency of charges before providing any payment information. Are you subject to late payment fees, rescheduling fees, taxes, any material costs? You should also know what's covered under confidentiality. You should know the exceptions to that confidentiality. And when will your coach be required to terminate the contract? Are there state and legal disclosures that must be made? Failure to inform you of these conditions may be illegal, it may be unethical, and it is definitely unprofessional of the coach. So it's a huge red flag. Red flag number 10 is the coach does not have appropriate insurance. I'm going to disagree on this. This is not a red flag. Insurance and the decision to insure your business is based on risk assessment, which includes the scope and scale of your practice, the business structure, as well as the coach's stomach for risk. That is very personal, and insurance is more tied to that risk exposure, weighing the financial cost versus a lack of professionalism on the coach. The coach can be incredibly professional and not need insurance because they take on little to no risk. Now, that being said, I think it's a very, very good idea for a coach to have insurance as soon as they can reasonably afford to. But that is a business decision made in an industry in which insurance is still optional. In any case, this one doesn't impact you, the client, nearly as much as it's going to impact the coach if something goes wrong. The penultimate red flag is feeling pressured or manipulated during the sales pitch. It's a cheap sales tactic that I don't appreciate in any environment, but there's no room for it in coaching. High pressure sales tactics violate the trust between you and the coach that you need to have for an effective relationship. So it gets the sale, but it destroys the product. If your coach is willing to sacrifice the integrity of the coaching relationship to get money from you, the harder they push, the faster you run away. And last but not least, red flag number 12 is the coach offers to cure ailments. Now, the original article said ailments in the psychological space, but really it's any space. Coaching will not cure your cancer, it will not cure your arthritis, it will not get rid of your tension headaches or leg cramps, it will not cure your depression, ADHD, addiction, PTSD, or anything. Now, it may likely help by providing you with coping strategies, by showing you compassion, by offering you motivation, but honor the illness. If it hurts, get it treated by a professional who's qualified to treat that condition. So that sums up red flags. If it looks off, smells off, or feels off, trust your gut. Coaching is not a decision that needs to be made rapidly, and you do have the opportunity to sleep on it and make a decision that's based on research and sound principles. Any coach worth their salt is going to share with you most of those details without you having to ask. But if you ask and they still won't share, well, that's another red flag. So if this was helpful, please like this video. Let me know what other things you like or what other considerations you have or questions you want to ask. What do you look for when you're hiring a coach? Let me know and I'll see if I can help you out, maybe in a follow-on video or just in the comments. But thank you for sticking it out. You have a great day and be blessed. Bye.